Good morning. On behalf of the U.S. House of Representatives, let me begin by expressing our condolences to the families of Warren Weinstein and Giovanni Laporto. As President Obama indicated, time for excuses. The President announced that an independent review is underway, and I think that is entirely appropriate. We need all the facts for the families and so that we can make sure that nothing like this ever happens again in our efforts to keep Americans safe. Here in the House, the people's priorities are our priorities. The American people just didn't send us here to sit on our rear ends and do nothing. They sent us here to get things done. And 100 days into this new Republican Congress, that's exactly what we're doing. Some things we've passed, like the Keystone Pipeline bill and ambush election bill, to protect American workers, are still being blocked by Washington Democrats. Some things, like our balanced budget, we can do on our own. But after years of gridlock under President Obama and Senate Democrats, we're making progress on areas of common ground. We've passed and the President has signed the first real bipartisan entitlement reform in nearly 2 decades. We've passed and the President has also signed a bill to prevent suicides amongst our veterans. And shortly we'll pass bills to protect consumers and our economy from hacking and cyber attacks. We're getting things done, but there's a lot more to come. This week, committees in the House and Senate passed trade bills that will make it easier to reach trade agreements that will help our economy and give Congress a bigger role in making sure that those agreements are fair. This bill is always a heavy lift, but I'm confident that we'll get it done. But in order to accomplish, we're going to need some bipartisan support. This bill will have strong support from House Republicans. We'll do our part, but the President must do his part as well. We're also working in a bipartisan way to reform and reauthorize the foreign intelligence capabilities that help keep Americans safe. And after the White House saw the writing on the wall and withdrew its objections, we're going to have a bipartisan bicameral bill to ensure that Congress reviews any potential agreement with Iran. Because there really are concerns shared by members of both parties that what's being discussed could lead to a nuclear-armed Iran. Look, American families and small businesses are still struggling. Many are still asking the question, where are the jobs? Some Americans are doing better, and frankly, that's great news. But most middle-class families aren't seeing the improvement in their daily lives. So we've got a lot more work to do. That said, finding common ground and getting things done for the American people, that's progress.
The bills passed by Congress so far, by the House rather, when you add up their CBO scores, are about $600 billion over 10 years. And yet you guys are doing a balanced budget, which is a non-binding document saying where you guys want to go. How do you square these two things?
Well, I think if you look at our plan to balance the budget, it's what we've been trying to do for a long time. You know, we had a plan in 1997 to balance the budget signed by President Clinton, and frankly, we were able to balance the budget 4 consecutive years in a row, leading to some $600 billion in budget surpluses. That effort can happen again, but we know that the real drivers of our debt, runaway entitlement programs, must be addressed. I'm glad that we were able to address, at least begin that process with the bill that the President signed last week, making the first changes to Medicare in a long, long time. We're going to continue our efforts to do that.
You see how that's between the Medicare and the tax bills and some of the other bills, why people would have questions about, about your commitment?
I would argue you're arguing apples and oranges here.
There's a bipartisan letter from Representative Schiff and Representative Cole asking for the AUMF or an AUMF to go to the floor soon so the House can work its will. What's your stance on that? And it's sort of disappeared since it came down from the White House. Is there any plan to move forward on an AUMF?
Well, the President was asking for less authorization than he has today to fight ISIS and those of their ilk. I frankly didn't think that was a very good strategy if our goal is to destroy and defeat ISIS. And so until the President gets serious about an overarching strategy to take on the terrorist threat, I don't know why we'd want to give him less authorization than he has today.
Are you protecting him from himself then?
As you all know, I've called for a broader, overarching strategy to deal with this terrorist threat. And the president seems reluctant to want to do that. Having gone to the Middle East just before Easter, it's pretty clear to me, talking to our allies in Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, that while there's a lot of efforts to defeat this menace, their ability to grow continues in spite of all of our efforts. And so the current strategy, in my view, is not working. And frankly, it's not enough to keep Americans safe.
Mr. Speaker, the 302B allocations are in that season where these are being set up for the spending issues. With the fight over the defense spending and the OCO money in the budget process, why do you think we aren't barreling toward a problem like we had 2 years ago in terms of getting these bills passed, the fights over sequestration, maybe turning off sequestration this fall?
Well, I think the House and Senate did a good job on our budgets. The appropriators are beginning to do their work, and we expect next week to have our first appropriation bills on the floor, the earliest beginning of the appropriation season in some 30 years. Listen, we're going to have our disagreements clearly with the White House. And we'll work through the appropriation process and deal with those problems as they come up. Having said that, if there's a way to reduce mandatory spending in a way that would provide relief to the sequester, like we did with the Ryan Murray budget plan, have at it.
But that was a bipartisan agreement, and that's why there was a way to do that. Here you have partisan documents in both bodies being merged in a conference committee, so why would there be an option to get a Murray-Ryan deal?
Well, there may be. I haven't seen the budget agreement yet. I'm not sure they've quite got it finished. But if, in fact, we can come to another budget agreement that the president will sign that will change the caps, listen, the sequester was the president's idea, it wasn't mine. And the Ryan Murray effort that we had several years ago worked to provide relief, and that could happen again.
Chairman Gowdy's planning on announcing next steps with the Benghazi Committee sometime today. Have you consulted him on those steps, and will we see a full House vote on subpoenaing a server?
I have not seen what his steps are, but I do expect that he's going to say something later on today.
I'm interested in this Ryan Murray idea that you're floating.
I'm not floating.
But you said,
All right, you've spoken out more frankly than you have in the past about the possibility of reprising this idea. As you know, Ryan Murray happened after a shutdown, after September 30th, and after a process came to a halt. Are you open to doing that kind of negotiation or blessing that process in the summertime before you have a potential shutdown?
No, I'm not. Nobody's interested in shutting down the government. We're interested in real fiscal responsibility, and if such an effort is called for in the budget agreement, and if such an effort can get off the ground, hope springs eternal.
Mr. Speaker, did you have any conversations with the president about the death of these two hostages prior to him coming out this morning? I'm wondering if you've had private consultations with him.
He and I have not talked about this.
On that same issue, you said at the beginning we need to have all the facts. Were you briefed on the counterterrorism operation that caused the death of these hostages ahead of time? And do you think that the U.S. officials who authorized it did everything they could to ensure there were no hostages?
I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to disclose classified information, but I was notified prior to the public disclosure of this, yes.
Do you think that Congress should have some sort of oversight role in investigating this incident? Will you hold hearings?
I'm sure that the House Armed Services Committee and/or the Intelligence Committee will look at this, but my guess is we'll wait for to see what the review board develops, and then take a look at that to make sure that this kind of a occurrence does not happen again. while, we work to protect American lives.
Should Bill Schuster remain overseeing the aviation industry while he's dating a lobbyist who has millions of dollars in lobbying before his committee?
Listen, I'm not going to discuss Mr. Schuster's relationship with anyone, but I'm also very comfortable that proper procedures were put in place to avoid a public or professional conflict of interest. Thanks.